Hey, well, welcome back, everybody. As you find your seats, you may not have known what you walked into today, but we are finishing up our series on dating, marriage, and singleness. Woo! All right, so hi, my name is Russ, and I have some friends up here today that I will introduce you to. And so I figured the best way to end this series on dating, marriage, and singleness would be to have a panel of my friends come up who have been in all sorts of those worlds, and you could ask questions about anything that we've talked about over the past 5 weeks. All right, so if you have any questions about anything that we've said, or maybe you have a question directed right at me, like, hey, Russ, you said this, and this was terrible. Can you explain? This is your opportunity. But we're not going to go like old school. We're going to throw up a QR code. It's going to look like this. Okay, it looks just like that, actually, identical to that. So if you were to pull out your phone, you could start entering questions anonymously. So we won't know what terrible things you ask. All right, won't be able to trace it back to you. But hold on, take that down for a second. Now that some of you had it, we'll put it back. Okay, so first I want to introduce you to our panel. All the way to your left, who's that? What's your name, sir?
Matty G. What's up?
Matty G. All right, who's next to me over here?
I'm Jhislanie, also known as Jay.
Here you go, Jhislanie. Here we go, keep it going.
My name's Queshon.
Q. Yeah.
My name is Rachel.
All right, okay, so just to get a little more comfortable up here, because if you've ever been in a panel service before, it could be a little uncomfortable to talk for the first time. So I'm just going to ask them a quick question just to get the ball rolling, get them a little comfortable being up here. So Matt, I'll start with you. Would you rather have, would you rather have, what's better, a puppy or a lifetime supply of soft pretzels? What's better?
That's a very...
Talking to the mic, son.
My on check. Okay. That's a stark difference. Man, I'm going to go first gut, puppy.
Oh, the puppy will die someday. All right, Jhislanie.
Worth it. It's worth it.
Jhislanie.
What's up?
Okay, so you and I have had this conversation before.
Oh, no.
So you know what's coming.
Yeah.
So if you could eat any animal in the world that's not a standard animal already that's consumed, what animal would you eat and why?
Give me some time to buffer.
We've talked about this before.
I did, but what did I say?
I don't know, that's what I'm asking.
Okay, this might be weird, but I would eat an elephant. I'm sorry.
It's terrible.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, people don't forget. They're going to bring this up.
That's my favorite animal. But
You would eat your favorite animal?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it might be good.
All right. Q.
Yeah.
What's better, a puppy or a lifetime supply of soft pretzels?
Soft pretzels.
Why?
Oh, wait. Hold on. Oh. So can I get like this cheese sauce?
It could be warm.
All right. So if I get the cheese sauce with it, it's the pretzels.
What's the cheese
Hands
sauce?
down.
You know the cheese sauce where you go to pretzel time in the mall?
What kind of cheese is that? Is that queso or?
Queso? No, it's not queso because it's not that special. It's very much not good for you. But
Is it a stuffed
Cheese
pretzel?
whiz. Cheese whiz.
Oh, cheese whiz.
Yes.
That's what it is?
melted cheese whiz, basically.
Ew.
Okay, all right. You guys can fight after the service. Rachel,
Yo.
any animal besides standard animals, what would you eat?
I think I just wouldn't is the thing.
No, you have to. That's not an option.
I guess a llama.
Okay. It's like a sheep with a long
That was the first thing
neck.
that popped into my mind.
Yeah. All right, so now that we've all talked a little bit, I want to hit you guys with a passage. All right, so I want to read this scripture really quick. It's going to define how we're going to go about this panel, and then we're going to start taking some questions. Is that cool? We cool with that? All right, so Proverbs 15:30 through 33, it says, "Light in a messenger's eyes brings joy to the heart, and good news gives health to the bones. Whoever heeds life-giving correction will be at home among the wise. Those who disregard discipline despise themselves, but the one who heeds correction gains understanding. Wisdom's instruction is to fear the Lord, and humility comes before honor. So this is the passage that we're going to take on these questions with. All right, so we have goals. Our first goal is to bring joy and hope in our answers. Second is to bring wisdom. The third goal is not, it can just happen. This wisdom might be correction for some of us, where you realize, oh man, I've been doing something not wisely for a long time. And sometimes that's hard to accept. But if you accept it, the scripture says you will have understanding. You'll gain understanding when you accept correction. So joy, hope, wisdom, correction. We're going to do this all in reverence to God. Okay? All of our answers. It's showing deep respect to God and the way God has designed relationships. And lastly, we're going to be humble because none of us up here are relationship experts and we don't claim to be. So it's just based on our experience and the gained wisdom we've had from time and talking to other people and pursuing knowledge around this subject matter. So going to go about it with humility. We're not experts. We're trying, though. Okay, so with that being said, I'm going to ask the first question. Anybody can respond first. This is a canned question. I prepared it in advance, and then I'll get to your guys' questions. So I don't know if you guys know who Joni Eareckson Tada is. Joni Eareckson Tada. She is an older woman at this point, not sure her exact age, but when she was just graduated high school, she dove off of a raft in a lake, and it was really shallow. She ended up breaking her spinal cord, and so she's been a quadriplegic since she was just out of high schooler. And she has this quote about her being quadriplegic. So she's paralyzed. She doesn't have use for her arms or legs. And so she had this quote about being content in Jesus. And she says this: I realized that the stakes were far greater, far more immense and cosmic than merely my satisfaction with a wheelchair and its unpleasant baggage. I shifted my focus onto God. His glory was at stake, and that made my satisfaction in him, not satisfaction with the way things were, the real issue. It was no longer a matter of being content with his plan for my life. It was a matter of finding him utterly and supremely the source of all contentment. This, much to my delight, would give him the greatest glory. This, as just like an able-bodied person who can get really discontent with the way my life is going, it was really hard to read. But it's also something that applies to the way that we've seen our relationships go. Because the only perfect person we're ever going to have in our lives is Jesus. So how have you guys seen maybe your understanding of contentment being fully in Jesus change throughout the different seasons of your life, or maybe in the season that you're in right now? Does that question make sense? Anybody want to go for it?
I was just gonna ask, could you repeat it just one more time?
Yeah, so how have you seen your contentment in Jesus change over time? Like, do you find that you're fully content with Jesus? And how have you grown understanding of that?
I'll go.
Go for it, Rachel.
I think I had to, first of all, stop listening to the world and really look at what Scripture says. I think I'm single, so I think sometimes with singleness, it feels like it's like you have to endure this to get to some mystical promised land, which marriage is not. You know, marriage is not actually the promised land. But I think sometimes the church and the world makes you think that it is, and that's hard for, a single person. So I had to kind of, okay, let me not look at what the world says. You have to be married by this age, and it's the thing you're after. And look at what Scripture says. And honestly, if you guys haven't read 1 Corinthians 7, I would write that down and just read it, because it talks about, it's actually better to remain as is, as single. You're more, you could be more focused and not divided. You're more focused on the things of the Lord, and your worries are more just for the Lord and not focused on pleasing a spouse. So it kind of rocked my world to read 1 Corinthians 7 and know that it's not talked about super a lot, really. People kind of tend to elevate, marriage over singleness. So for me, I had to just pursue the Lord on what does Scripture say. And you know what? Like, contentment in Jesus, having that, it really, being single and being content, like, really displays the sufficiency and fullness of Christ. And like, it's from Him. It's a sign and a wonder. If I could be content in Jesus, and like, that's a daggone miracle in this world. Like, that's a sign of Christ's love. And marriage kind of shows. Sorry, I'm going off here.
It's all right. Keep going.
Marriage kind of shows, the depth of Christ's love, because you're vowed to one person. The depth of Christ's love is on display. But singleness really displays like the breadth of Christ's love, and you have more freedom to love and show your love to a broad range of people, to like impact the kingdom and impact eternity and invest in others. So yeah, for me, it was really like switching from the world view to the God view.
Cool.
Basically.
All right, so I got a question from the crowd here. It says, how do I know when I'm ready to start seeking a romantic relationship? Go for it.
Yeah. Man, I've struggled with this a lot, of just like being ready. My brother got married at like 20 and I was 16, and he's been, married for 12 years. He's got 3 kids, and I'm like, that's insane. That's crazy, but it's amazing. But at a young age, I was just kind of exposed to, people around me being in relationships, being married. And I've struggled a lot with being ready. What does that even look like? What am I preparing for? What is that? And I've found it in more ways than one. It's not about being ready, it's about being willing. God can do a lot more in your willing than any of your ability. And I've had a few friends say that to me over my time, over my searching of relationships, searching of knowledge and pursuit of romantic relationships. And I'm gonna keep it short because I tend to go long. My friends know I'm a TED talker, so I'm gonna keep it short on that. But yeah, be willing to make the hard decisions, willing to go off script. A lot of times we have a plan and we take it in our own hands and be like, okay, God, you got me this far. I'm gonna go here now. I'm gonna step back into the driver's seat and let me do it. And He'll let you do it. And hopefully sooner than later you realize maybe I wasn't supposed to get into the driver's seat yet. So yeah, be more willing, and that will actually get you ready.
Can I add on to that?
Go for it.
Hey, so I think also talking to people, even though he can be your best friend, don't talk to your best friend who's been through like 7 different relationships in the past 2 days. You know what I mean? Like, talk to people that are in like healthy relationships, but also like you can trust them and they'll give you their honest opinion. I know I was probably 17, and I was dating this girl and she called me selfish. And I was like, what? What do you mean I'm selfish? I picked up my mom's minivan today. But then I want to go to my mom and I'm telling her this whole situation, and she's like, yeah, you can be selfish sometimes. And I was tight. I was like, what do you mean? But it's like, even though at the time I wasn't really ready to accept it, it's like, no, that's the truth that I needed to hear, So go to people older than you, but also people who have healthy patterns of relationships.
That's great. Another question. What is biblically appropriate intimacy before marriage? They give the examples of hold hands, hugging, kissing, etc. What's biblically appropriate intimacy? Andres, do you want to come up here actually and answer this question? I'm just kidding. Yeah. High school director, just figured you'd been here before.
Yeah, on that, I think here's a word that I've definitely struggled with. It's definitely a Christianese word. It's definitely thrown around in the church. Your conviction. That's my conviction, that's your conviction. Sometimes that causes more division than actual figuring out and answering a question. You end up having more questions. I would say it is up to your discretion, but obviously have a spiritual father or mother in your life. Have somebody who is well along, I would say at least 10 years, ahead of you. They're leading a life of spiritual health and physical wealth and leading a life that you want to someday, whether that's marriage or whether that's singleness and doing the will of God in that way. That asking those type of questions to that person will help you get your answer. But I would say if you have to ask yourself multiple times, is this crossing a line? Is this causing me to fall into temptation? I would go back to that one thing that is and make that a point and write it down and be like, okay, maybe I can't hold hands with that person. Maybe we can't kiss, after dark or at all, and it's going to be different, and I've heard Christian couples, sometimes they don't kiss until their wedding day. And I used to be like, that's crazy. Like, what? You have that type of self-discipline? I'm like, that's insane. I would think that that's weird. But over my life and my experiences, my time, just being a Christian, I'm 28, I'm single as well. And it's like, we live in an evil world. We live in a world where there's a lot of temptation. There's a lot of things going on. A lot of times we think, oh, well, I'm this far in my faith. I'm not going to get caught up in that. Don't think you won't be deceived. Don't think that you're somewhere better or farther than somebody else. You're going to fall just as hard. Look at King David. Look at King Solomon. Look at all these people in the Bible who fell really, really hard. So, yeah, that was
good.
I
want to hear Jhislanie's take on this as well. Do you want me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Also, just a side note, we're getting a lot of questions, way too many for the amount of time we have. So we're going to do as many questions as we have to, but if we don't get to all your questions, and some people are doing stuff like just complimenting Q, you have cool shoes, so just somebody out there wants you to know. And yeah, they are cool, but we're not going to be able to get to everything, just a heads up. All right, so Jhislanie, what is biblical appropriate intimacy before marriage?
Yeah, I think I would agree with Matt and go with your convictions. I feel like there's a reason why the Bible isn't like black and white with this stuff, because it's not like one size fits all. And I feel like you need to ask yourself some questions of like if you're like, how self-aware are you in that relationship to know when you're crossing a boundary or about to touch the boundary? Like, for example, like if holding hands takes me to a place where I don't need to go, then I need to communicate that with the person that I'm dating, and not just figure it out as you go. So I think it's very important with you and the Lord to ask the Lord questions of like, okay, Lord, like what is too far and what actually would be a good boundary for me to set. Even if the person that you're dating is like cool with holding hands, that could be cool for them. But if it's not cool for you and it sends you into a place that you don't need to go, then that person needs to honor your boundary. Does that make sense?
Amen.
I got a practical one that's this mentor I know once said, and to an engaged couple, and it was basically just make sure your feet are on the ground. Okay? Do you know what that means?
Say it again. I don't think I heard you.
Make sure your feet are on the ground.
Firmly planted.
Got it.
Right?
Explain it.
If your feet aren't on the ground, they're... Do people know what I'm talking about? Okay.
I think Jay wants you to explain it, though.
Explain it to the people that don't know.
It's practical. So if you're kissing or whatever, keep your feet on the ground.
So when you find someone you're interested in, how do you ensure the relationship goes slow? How do you focus on being their friend without the distraction of attraction? That rhymed.
Can you say that?
When you find someone you're interested in, how do you ensure the relationship goes slow? There's been a bunch of questions like this about like How do you ensure the relationship goes slow? Or what do you do if you don't want to have sex with your boyfriend or girlfriend, but you've already done it and you want to stop doing it, stuff like that? Do you guys have any wisdom on that?
That's another question. I mean, that second question that you said, that's like a little bit deeper. But to attack,
Do you want to touch any of them?
attack the first question. Just say it one more time.
How do you ensure the relationship goes slow?
Yes. Okay. Slow. Here we go. I would say reassess. Reassess a lot. If you have a question, I would almost call it, I don't know, for lack of better words, the Jesus method. You look at what Jesus did. He asked a lot of questions. And a lot of times we forget that we can do that, whether that's in a friendship, whether that's in a romantic relationship, whether that's even in marriage. It's like maybe you've been married for 20 years, but you forgot something maybe of your spouse, and you're like, oh, I should really remember that, but I don't, or we just talked about that last week and I can't remember it. Ask the question. It's like that. I've been very hesitant about asking questions because I've struggled with not looking smart. I've struggled with not, making like, oh man, I've been studying that thing for a really long time. I should know it. But sometimes you just forget. And so I would reassess with your partner if it's a romantic relationship and you guys have set the stage of like, hey, I'm not just interested in you, I want to date you, I want to, pursue a romantic relationship. Like one of my friends, actually here tonight, he had said to me a while ago, being unclear is unkind. Being unclear is unkind. If you have something that you really want to say to that person, but you're afraid how they're going to react, if they respond in a way that even hurts you, that could be an inclination. Maybe they're not the person that you should pursue. And it's hard when you got a crush. It's hard when you're falling hard. It's hard when you're dreaming up all these possibilities that I've definitely been in that realm of dreaming and just going on and on. I get caught up. But yeah, I would say reassess, ask questions, and be honest.
Go from there. I would say also communication. Communicate with the person that you're talking to, you're in a relationship with. I'm gonna share a little story. So I'm married, and the first time that I went to kiss her, and then I was like, wait a minute. And then I was like, okay, let me ask God first, like, we there yet, you know what I mean? And like, it's a little weird to think about, but like, have communication with the person that you're with. So don't just say, oh, like, no, it just feels right. We're vibing, we're in the right place, right moment. It may not be the right place, right moment, you know what I mean? And see, like, are you good? It may cut the romance a little bit if you think that, but it's just, are you good? Is this place that we kiss or not? And not just kissing, but like anything in general in your relationship, just have open communication.
Yeah, that's good.
So we talked about biblical intimacy too. And so biblically, sex outside of marriage is a no-go. That's a no-fly zone. So what do you do if you're in a situation where you're in a relationship and you're having sex and you want to stop having sex? I guess, Q, you kind of answered this a little bit, right? The communication piece. Anybody have any other practical things?
I would say separately, you both should talk to the Lord. Most of the answers I say are gonna be like, talk to the Lord, because it's all about relationship and friendship with the Lord. And so I think it's very important that separately you guys should ask for forgiveness, and come back together and make an agreement that you guys aren't gonna do that anymore. And when you're in a moment that like, oh, it's about to happen again, be a buzzkill, ruin the mood and say, we had a conversation, we were on the same page, and we're not doing this. And once again, if like the other person's like, no, like who cares? Then that is an insight that that person isn't the person you should keep pursuing. Yeah.
That was good. That was a good answer. That was really good. A little bit of a different pace, but this person asked, how do you grow through the loneliness of singleness and still trust in God's plan for you? Because it doesn't matter what life stage you're in. I've been married a long time, and I was still single at some point and dealt with that loneliness. Like, it applies to everybody. But how do you deal with that loneliness and still trust that God has a good plan for you?
For sure. First of all, it's good to admit that and acknowledge the loneliness, and to just not run from it, and to really bring it to God. And it's like he says, that he is our good shepherd, that we lack nothing. And if that's true, then we have to really pursue him and be like, okay, if you're saying I lack no good thing, what does that look like? And really the biggest thing here, with these questions, even some about boundaries or whatever, it's are we wholeheartedly living for Jesus? And are we pursuing him and going to him with everything, with our loneliness, and letting him fill that void? And it sounds weird to say sometimes if you're even new with a relationship with God or what, but he's designed us, we're all looking for this inward, we have this inward longing for the Lord, and he can fill it. And we just have to take him at his word and believe that he can fill it. And for me, it took me as a Christian so long to actually give the Lord the first part of my day and go to him in prayer and worship and journaling. And I've just cultivated this intimacy with him and this love relationship and these affections for him that grew my contentment in him, so that knowing it's going to be okay, whatever happens, does my life make sense in light of eternity? He has gifts for you. He has gifts he's given you. He has people in your life that he wants you to invest in. He has kingdom purpose for you. So sometimes we just get very caught up in the ways of the world and being lonely. They're legit feelings, but take God at his word and read what it says and go to him with all of your emotions, and I promise you, he will fill that void.
Yeah, that's good.
You want to go? All right. This was a quote from, I think, we did a panel 2-3 years ago at Sanctuary, from Mr. Bob Donovan. He said, God has purpose for you. I can't read. Yeah, God's purpose for you before you find your person. And a lot of times I say that knowing the Lord is the best default you can have, because then it doesn't rely on your own strength or what you can do, what you know in your relationship. It's okay, honestly, I don't know what to say right now. You're crying, you're upset, this is going on in your family. Let's take a second, let's pray, and then let's go to God and come back together. But then also, me and Corey say this all the time, we don't need each other. We don't need to be in a relationship with one another, but we want to, and I know as someone that's married, it's oh, you're saying that because you're already there. But it's no, honestly, having someone with you is a plus. You're not going to get to heaven and God's going to say, okay, the single children over here and the married ones over here. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, our purpose is to be sons and daughters of God and to spread the gospel, so.
All right.
There was.
Oh, go for it.
Yeah. What you were talking about was good, and now my brain is having a little brain fart.
You wanted to repeat something?
Yeah.
Rewind a little bit, Rachel. Give it to us again.
I mean, it was really just about cultivating the relationship with God.
Yes. That's it. Yeah. Being content when we're I think the first question, being content in Jesus. I had a really cool conversation just yesterday with a non-Christian friend over dinner, and it was about faith, it was about God, it was about existence, what's the purpose, all things like that. And he asked me, and he kind of he got kind of really focused. He was like, I really want to ask you this question. I said, okay, what's up? And he looked at me and he said, the deeper that you get in your faith, the more seasoned that you get, the older that you get in your faith, do you have more questions about your faith, or do you feel like you're satisfied, like you have the answers that you were seeking? And I sat there because I was like, I could really just answer right now, but I'm gonna think for a second. And I told him, honestly, I was like, I have a lot of questions. I wake up, in the day, and I'm, God, like, why is this still going on? And like, what is this for? What's my purpose here? Like, am I gonna get married? Am I gonna have kids? What's happening? And I told him, though, I may have more questions, but every time I ask Jesus, I ask God these questions, because I've developed and cultivated this relationship with him, I fall more in love with him. Whether he answers my question or not, like you were saying, we've created that intimacy. We've created that I can ask him this question, and I may not get the answer I wanted or even an answer at all, but I'm building with him. And I'm resting in that. I'm waiting. I'm being patient. And I may even have more questions. And God created us to have wonder, to be adventurous, to go out there and figure things out. And I think it's great to have questions. And so just being content in Jesus, like it's, I'm trying to correlate it to the question that was going on, but I don't know. I just felt like that was on my heart that I wanted to tag on there. It's just, be content in learning more about Jesus, and that will shape your heart. That will put you on the path to be ready, to be in that space where you're feeling confident that, okay, I can take this next step. You can still be afraid. It's going to happen, but take that next step, in doing that. So.
And let's be honest, sometimes our will clashes with God's will, for sure, but it's just going to him with it. And it's believing and having faith that like what he has for us is so much better than what we're like afraid of losing or afraid of not getting. Like knowing he's good. His character is goodness, and he has good for us. And, just it's hard, but it's as you build that faith and as you build that intimacy with him, you'll just be trusting him more and knowing, like, I'm okay. Like, I am where he has me, and I have purpose, and, yeah.
This is a question that I got a lot from people in the community after our dating messages. Outside of physical boundaries, what are other boundaries in a dating relationship? It actually doesn't even have to be a dating relationship. It could be a single thing too, because I actually talked about boundaries in the singleness one. So boundaries of the opposite sex. In general, boundaries with friends, boundaries in a dating relationship. No, just boundaries in general. I gave an example in my message about if I'm a guy and I'm sharing stuff with a lady friend that I'm not sharing with my guy friends, that's a boundary that needs to go up. 100%. In the church world, sometimes, this is Kevin Butterfield is saying, we give grace when we need to give like red flags. Or when there's a red flag, we give grace when there needs to be boundaries, something like that. Do you remember saying that? No, you said it.
Guess one that I have in dating relationships, you don't have to rush. So I know for me, when I was, I don't know if this really matters or not, but when I was 18, my mom had my little sister. So then I always see on TV shows how like people would bring in relationships like way too early, and like the kids would just get all like the bad stuff from it. So just in my mind, it was like, I don't want to bring someone around my family who I'm not sure like I'm gonna move forward with. And I'm not saying you're not gonna get it right every single time, but it's more like, okay, like if you're dating this person, it doesn't be the first week of you dating and they're meeting your fourth cousin, like just take it in stride, get to know them, and then like, slowly start to bring them into the fold. So,
Jay, what about you?
Yeah, I would say there's emotional boundaries. I feel like if the person you're dating replaces your circles of friends, for example, like if you're going to them and like telling them everything, like something happened to you with your family and you're just like sharing all of that with them to where like you almost like isolate yourself. And your friends are like, yo, where are you? What happened? And like, I feel like that's where there should be a boundary because yes, you could share with the person you're dating, like at a timely pace, but that doesn't mean that they should replace your circle of friends, those people that you've like built history with, like especially with this person you're just meeting, like you should be talking to your circle of friends first about emotional stuff rather than like throwing up on the person that you're dating.
So, what about let's say you're in a dating relationship? Do your boundaries change with your guy friends when you're in a dating relationship?
I would say yes, especially if you, like for me, when I started dating Andres, I am an extroverted person and I'm really friendly. And it took for my friend to be like, hey Jay, you're a little too friendly with the guys over there. And I was like, what? I'm just being friendly, like I'm just being welcoming. But like learning and almost taking the perspective of like, okay, how would that make Andres feel to see me be super friendly to all these guys? So I had to step back and ask myself, what are some boundaries that I can have with myself, with the opposite sex to honor the dating relationship that I'm in.
Could you give any examples of that? Do you have any like shareable examples of what those boundaries can look like?
Shareable boundaries.
Give you a minute. Like I wouldn't be alone with somebody, right?
Yes. Like I wouldn't be alone with the opposite sex talking for so long. I would have like another friend talking with me with the opposite sex and like making sure that there's other people around and not just me in a room alone with the opposite sex. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I would say keep it public. Meet in a public area. Don't, go over their house, invite them over to your house. Like, just keep it public.
What about when you were all single? How did you go about setting up healthy boundaries with your friends of the opposite sex so that you weren't like leading all of them on? Any advice on that?
That's a really good question. Like Jay, I'm also very extroverted. I tell people a lot I'm extroverted. I'm like double. It's just being around people. That's my happy place. I love connecting with people, hearing stories. Just I'll just talk till 2 a.m. about whatever. But I've noticed that it's healthy to just keep routine. And yeah, maybe you will, you're in a very, going back and forth conversation and it's like going somewhere. And I mean, this is with friendships, this is in, dating relationships. Just if it's getting late, just like, hey, let's take a pause on this and hey, let's, when I see you next week at church, we'll continue the conversation or, when, we can have a phone call, just be, upfront about that. I would say time is intimacy. That was told to me a while ago, and a lot more times after that. Time is intimacy, especially even if you're like I know you asked like for non-dating relationships, or when you're single, but I guess it could apply to both. Say if you're interested in somebody and you go out for coffee and then maybe you go for a walk and then you're like in the car and maybe you've, now it's been 3 hours that you've been hanging out and in your mind, you maybe are just like, oh yeah, I'm having fun with this person. No, it's fine that we're talking and just hanging out, talking. And then it's like 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours. And later you might go home and be like, okay, maybe I wasn't that interested in that person. And, okay. And then you just kind of go. The main thing I'm saying is like the time that you're spending with people, it creates connection. It creates, when you start sharing things of a deeper level, it goes another step. And just make sure that when you're hanging out, I would say specifically with the opposite sex, like how long you're spending. Keep it short. If you're not interested in that person, like keep it short, because they could take it the wrong way. And it's not on you if they take it the wrong way. It's on them. They're reading the situation wrong. There's different things that can come from that. But I would say, yeah, just time is intimacy, and just be mindful of that when you're hanging out.
Yeah, like with my guy friends, I just treat them like bros, That's what I do.
You call him brother?
I usually say, hey, man.
Hey, brother. All right, so we're out of time. So can you guys all just give your best resource that you've had for relationship, dating, singleness, marriage stuff? Like, have you read a book, heard a podcast?
Oh, I got one.
Besides recommending Bob Donovan to everybody.
Yo, that's my dad. Emotionally Healthy Leadership, Discipleship, everything by Pete Scazzero. He's talks about cultivating healthy singleness. He knows how to celebrate singleness. I love him. And just leading out of your marriage, it's great. So Emotionally Healthy Leadership, Pete Scazzero.
All right. Can't spell it. Nobody can. Q. Resource besides Bob Donovan.
All right, so I don't read books, and I can't think of any podcasts. I'm gonna go back again, just the people around you. Shout out Kevin Butterfield and Andre Ciala. They hear from me, the good advice. Yeah, I'm sorry, y'all. That's all I got.
No, community is good. We talked about dating. Community is a good idea.
So this isn't a dating or relationship book, but it's about self-awareness, and it's about your emotions. The book is called The Voice of the Heart by Chip Dodge. And basically he talks about our 8 core emotions. And what I was going to say with the loneliness, loneliness is actually a gift from the Lord. And I feel like culture talks heavily about the impairment of that gift, which is isolation. And so I think when people hear loneliness, they're like, oh, I got to isolate, or there's something wrong with me. Actually, there's a gift in the loneliness, and what that gift is intimacy. And so that is just a little bit of what Chip Dodge talks about in that book. I feel like it's helped me once I've learned that these emotions that I've deemed negative are actually a gift from the Lord. It's actually helped me in my relationships with others and relationships like the one I'm in right now. So, The Voice of the Heart by Chip Dodge.
Matt, last one.
Yeah, I have a lot, but I'm...
Just one.
Just one. Oh, man. Shameless plug, if you've ever heard of Wild at Heart.
Oh, small group.
Small groups. If you're a guy, this is a guy small group, Wild at Heart. No, seriously, it's a great book. Kev, you might have to help me out on this, but it's an adventure to have, right? A battle to fight, and a beauty to love. And it talks about the intimacy with God, what has God ordained us as men to be as a representation of God, as a reflection of God's image. It's a great book. We're doing that study Thursday night, 7:00 here.
Cool. Mine is You and Me Forever by Francis and Lisa Chan. It's a book. You can go read it. There's also a video version of it, so you just watch Francis talk about it, which is pretty great. And so, last thing. The QR code is going to be up there for 1 more minute, so you might want to scan it one more time because we're going to do a little overtime thing. if you want your question answered, we'll make a podcast episode and go through as many questions as we can because there's no time limit, so we can just keep answering questions and we'll make it as good as possible. So just label the beginning of the question as overtime, colon. Don't write the word colon, just put a little colon there. And then your question, and we'll try to answer it on the podcast.